Elias Ward failed the first time. The second time, he failed faster. His efforts to avert the catastrophe of June 12 did not save Luna Marin. They merely accelerated the timeline toward an identical yet sharper rupture. The relationship, designated case file LW32, dissolved under the pressure of protective paranoia exactly 14 months earlier than the original recorded incident. This outcome was the direct consequence of the subject's interference with fixed points. This level of accelerated dissolution was statistically improbable. It was also inevitable. To understand the acceleration of the event, one must analyze the moment the subject, Elias Ward, re-engaged with the timeline. It was 4:17 a.m. Ward, age 34, awoke in the past. Specifically April 3rd, 3 years prior to the catastrophic future he desperately sought to prevent. His physical state was marked by extreme temporal fatigue, evidenced by insomniac scarring around the eyes and a constant low-grade tremor in his hands. He wore the armor of guilt, layers of dark, functional clothing intended to shield him from observation, or perhaps from accountability. Ward's motivation was singular and ultimately destructive: protection. He carried the full memory of the original timeline, the specific dates, the laughter, and the precise moment of Luna's irreversible emotional trauma. He saw the future not as possibility, but as a rigid blueprint of failure. His original destruction, he believed, had been caused by his inability to act. This new reality was defined by his certainty that he must act, constantly, preemptively. The intervention began immediately. On day one, Ward observed a casual conversation Luna Marin was having with an acquaintance. A minor interaction Elias knew would lead to a larger, detrimental social circle later in the original timeline. Elias performed a minor, seemingly harmless maneuver, pulling her aside under the guise of an urgent private matter. It was a gesture of protection. Observed from an objective distance, it was the first instance of suffocating control. This small deviation ensured that Leo Bradford, the primary counteragent, would be introduced into Luna Marin's life 11 weeks ahead of schedule. The preventative measure was, in reality, the catalyst for the final and most rapid separation. Elias Ward's attempt to mitigate damage became the damage itself. Elias Ward returned to October 14th. The primary temporal objective was modification of the existing sequence of events, specifically preventing the incident of June 2024. Upon temporal re-entry, Ward exhibited a temporary state of profound relief, immediately followed by elevated levels of anxiety, defined primarily by hypervigilance. The initial phase of re-establishment involved calculated isolation. Ward's primary assumption was that the catastrophic event was facilitated by ambient factors and specific social vectors active in Luna Marin's environment. Within 72 hours of arrival, Ward initiated several preemptive modifications to their shared living structure and routine. Modification 1: Housing relocation. Ward insisted on relocating Marin from her established apartment in the city center to a smaller, less accessible property approximately 40 miles north. The stated justification to Marin was, and quote, a quieter environment conducive to artistic pursuits, end quote. The unstated, operational objective was the elimination of accidental proximity to key geographical locations identified in the original timeline's incident report. Modification 2: Social reduction. Ward systematically discouraged Marin and Apo's routine interactions. Specifically targeted individuals included 2 former colleagues who frequently utilized the local community center, the periphery of the original incident zone. Ward's method involved scheduling overlapping commitments and fabricating minor illnesses to create unavailability. This resulted in an observed 65% reduction in Marin's weekly external socialization within the first month. Modification 3: Surveillance protocol. Ward established a consistent, undocumented monitoring protocol over Marin and Apo's digital communications and physical movements. This was characterized by repeated, seemingly casual inquiries regarding her itinerary, excessive insistence on escorting her during errands previously performed independently, and the implementation of application-based location sharing without full disclosure of the frequency of monitoring. The ambient environment established by Ward was characterized by controlled stability, but internally, This environment generated mounting psychological pressure. Ward maintained an average sleep cycle deficit of 4.5 hours per 24-hour period, documented via wearable technology data, directly correlating with persistent visual scanning of surroundings and abrupt changes in routine necessitated by perceived threat assessment. Luna Marin, in this modified timeline, initially perceived these alterations as intensified devotion. Her behavior analysis showed compliance coupled with rising confusion regarding the sudden urgency governing routine decisions. The establishment period concluded abruptly with the inciting intervention, occurring 6 weeks post-temporal reentry. On November 29th, Ward and Marin attended a neighborhood exhibition organized by Marin's small independent art collective. The event was routine, a standard public display in a neutral, brightly lit venue. Ward had meticulously vetted the location and guest list prior to attendance. At approximately 1917 local time, Marin engaged in a brief discussion with a gallery attendee. The discussion centered entirely on lighting techniques and material sourcing, a conversation observed by Ward as entirely innocuous save for its spatial proximity to a specific architectural element, a recessed alcove adjacent to the rear loading dock. In the original timeline incident report, the alcove was irrelevant. However, Ward's memory of the future disaster, specifically the moments leading up to it, involved a fleeting image of a misplaced object, a small, dark rolling cart near an identical structural configuration. Although the current venue was different, the architectural similarity triggered a severe and immediate protective response in Ward. At 1921, Ward rapidly crossed the room. His gait was described by secondary witnesses as urgent and unusually rigid. He interrupted Marin's conversation with Hayes mid-sentence, placing his hand firmly on Marin's wrist. The action was physically intrusive. Hayes, observing the sudden change in demeanor, immediately ceased conversation and withdrew. Ward did not offer a verbal explanation or apology to Hayes. Ward addressed Marin with a low, controlled vocal intensity. "We are leaving now, Luna. The air quality in this section is unacceptable. We need to exit." Marin resisted the action. Her response was documented as low-level verbal protest. "Elias, I was mid-conversation. It smells perfectly fine." Ward escalated the physical coercion, applying pressure to Marin's arm and guiding her swiftly toward the primary egress. The movement was executed with an efficiency suggesting training or operational necessity, disproportionate to the stated environmental justification. The sudden departure caused observable social disruption within the immediate proximity of the couple. This immediate, unprovoked intervention served as the definitive point of timeline deviation. Ward's motivation, protection from a perceived, non-existent threat based on displaced spatial memory, was successful in removing Marin from the area. However, the action was entirely public and lacked rational justification, directly establishing the central conflict of suffocation and instability in their current relationship structure. Analysis of Marin and Apo's subsequent behavior indicated a measurable shift from confusion to overt concern regarding Ward's mental state. She did not perceive the action as protection, but as an acute behavioral deviation. Later that evening, Serena Ward, Elias's elder sister, contacted him telephonically. Serena, acting on information regarding Elias's increasingly erratic professional cancellations and evasiveness, initiated a structured inquiry into his well-being. Serena Ward's statement, and quote, "You sound like you haven't slept in months, Elias. You told me you were finally doing better. Luna told me you pulled her out of that gallery like there was a fire. What is happening?" End quote. Ward's response was brief, defensive, and nonspecific. "Nothing is happening, Serena. I am maintaining optimal awareness. That environment was detrimental. I am preventing recurrence." The language utilized by Elias Ward, and quote, "optimal awareness," and quote, "preventing recurrence," and quote, did not align with casual, personal terminology. It suggested an operational context, a fact noted and flagged for future review by Serena Ward. The intervention demonstrated that Ward's priority was no longer living the modified timeline, but controlling it down to microdetails. His objective was achieved. Marin was safe from a specific, past-identified risk. The unforeseen consequence was the introduction of intense, visible instability into the foundation of their relationship 2 years before the original timeline rupture. Ward, in his attempt to eliminate the external threat, had successfully established himself as the primary source of internal unease. The controlled environment was, structurally, a cage. The accelerated timeline generated an increase in observable controlling behaviors from Elias Ward. His objective, the prevention of the incident scheduled for October 12th in the previous iteration, required preemptive maneuvers across Luna Marin's professional and social life. Ward initiated interference under the guise of concern, but the systemic nature of his interference rapidly generated friction. On August 14th, Ward accessed and altered the database controlling Marin's freelance photography appointments, canceling 3 remote assignments that, according to his fractured temporal memory, placed her within a hazardous proximity to the intended event's geographical origin. Marin registered the cancellations as administrative errors, but her subsequent investigation revealed Ward's digital signature on the access logs. When confronted, Ward provided a vague explanation involving potential fraud risks associated with the clients. Marin accepted the explanation on the surface, but surveillance data collected later by Ward indicated a measurable drop in her engagement level. The interference escalated from logistical manipulation to direct behavioral control. Ward began accompanying Marin to all non-essential social gatherings, deploying a strategy of proximity that restricted her ability to engage in casual conversation or independent networking. This tactic was explicitly documented by Dr. Maya Lorenz during a mandated counseling session with Ward and Apo's sister, Serena Ward, who noted the behavior as a significant departure from Ward and Apo's established relationship patterns. Serena Ward articulated concerns that Elias was confusing protection with ownership, a distinction Lorenz cataloged under, and quote, trauma response, displacement and hypervigilance, end quote. The presence of Leo Bradford became an intensified catalyst in this environment. Bradford operated with transparent, measured stability. He offered Marin professional partnership on a long-term commercial project, providing an objective reason for interaction that Ward could not easily dismantle without direct sabotage. Ward's attempts to discredit Bradford were subtle but constant. Misplaced meeting invitations, falsified scheduling conflicts, and targeted negative commentary regarding Bradford's previous business ventures, all sourced from the future timeline which Marin had no access to verify. On September 5th, the conflict reached an overt operational level. During an exhibit Marin was obligated to attend, Ward physically intervened, pulling Marin away from a conversation with an established colleague, citing immediate malaise. Marin's initial compliance disintegrated into public resentment. She retreated to her vehicle, refusing further contact for a period of 48 hours. This event was critical. The accelerated timeline indicated Marin achieved 48 hours of separation far earlier than in the original sequence, demonstrating that Ward's protective efforts were counterproductive to stability. During this period of isolation, Ward dedicated his resources to confirming the specifics of the original trauma. He sought definitive proof that the event was unavoidable without his intervention, attempting to re-solidify the moral justification for his current controlling behavior. Using access codes retrieved from his temporal memory, he obtained a sealed police report and supporting psychological evaluation reports related to the incident he was trying to prevent. The revelation was instantaneous and devastating to Ward and Apo's protective mandate. The primary factor in the original incident was not a random, external calamity Marin was victim to. The report detailed an emotional and financial collapse originating directly from Ward's prior actions. Specifically, a series of failed investments and resulting debt that destabilized Marin's professional life and mental health. The ultimate fracture that Ward remembered was the result of his own failure to manage their shared reality, not an exogenous attack he needed to protect her from. He had returned to prevent a catastrophic consequence that he, Elias Ward, had originally manufactured. His attempts to protect her were efforts to save her from the collateral damage of his past self. This critical intelligence shifted Ward's operational focus. Instead of accepting the self-culpability and altering his foundational behavior, Ward interpreted the data as further evidence of his necessity. If he was the source of the danger, then absolute control over his immediate environment and Marin's sphere of influence was paramount. The mission changed from protection against an external threat to the containment of an internal time bomb, himself, via Marin's complete immobilization. Ward implemented enhanced surveillance. He installed security applications on Marin's primary communication device, granting him full access to real-time text and location data. He restricted their living space, creating an environment where Marin's movements were constantly within his visual or auditory range. This suffocating atmosphere pushed Marin inexorably toward Leo Bradford, who offered stability and objective professional engagement, free from the paranoia that now defined Ward. Bradford represented an escape route, a verifiable, sane alternative to the anxiety Ward projected. On September 28th, Marin initiated covert contact with Serena Ward. The communication logs detailed Marin expressing overwhelming fatigue and distress, characterized by the phrase, and quote, "I feel like I and Oppos am drowning, but I can and Oppos. T-name the water," end quote. Serena Ward, relying on Dr. Lorenz and Oppos' assessment, recognized this as acute emotional suppression due to hypervigilance from an external source. The consequence of Ward's desperate containment became manifest. Marin purchased a one-way train ticket out of the city, scheduled for the following week, coinciding precisely with the original date of the averted tragedy. This action, documented via Ward's surveillance system, confirmed that his preemptive protection had not prevented separation. It had merely expedited the means and methods of Marin's inevitable escape. The timeline was not corrected. It was accelerated toward the same destructive endpoint. Ward's hyperprotection generated the necessity for flight. He had built the cage and forced the bird to fly away sooner. The environment inside Elias Ward and Oppos' apartment was cold, sterile, and oppressively quiet. It was October 10th. This date, in the original timeline, marked the beginning of the end. In this revised timeline, Elias had ensured no external disaster could occur. He had eliminated the risks, but the pressure of that elimination had become the disaster itself. Luna Marin entered the apartment at 2100 hours, documented by the building security camera log. She looked visibly fatigued. Elias was seated at the dining table, meticulously reviewing a printout of Luna's recent work schedule. He had acquired the schedule via unauthorized access to her corporate calendar. End quote. "You called Leo Bradford again today," end quote. Elias stated, his voice flat, devoid of accusation but thick with control. It was a statement of fact, a data point that violated his calculated trajectory. Luna stopped 6 feet from the table. She did not remove her coat. End quote, "We had a professional meeting, Elias. He's taking over the gallery renovations. Something you insisted I stop managing?" End quote. End quote. "He is pursuing you romantically, Luna. That is the verifiable secondary outcome of those meetings. He is not a protective asset." End quote. Elias stood up, folding the schedule with practiced precision. End quote. "You don and Oppos. T understand, do you?" End quote. Luna's voice was low, strained. End quote. "You didn't and Oppos. T stopped the future from happening. You just brought it here faster." End quote. Elias approached her. His focus was not on her words, but on the small, nearly invisible scar above her wrist, the one he had tried so desperately to prevent from being inflicted during the original disaster. The scar was absent. He had succeeded in that metric. End quote. "I prevented the event," end quote. Elias insisted. End quote. "I ensured your safety. What you perceive as discomfort is simply the necessary adjustment to a secure environment." End quote. End quote. "The secure environment," end quote. Luna echoed, a sudden, harsh laugh escaping her. End quote. "You mean the one where I feel like I am being investigated? Where you check my travel manifests, where you question every interaction, every friend, every decision I make. I used to choose stability. Now I am being managed for stability." End quote. Elias registered the shift in her emotional profile. High distress, acute conflict avoidance failure. He needed to reestablish control. End quote. Leo Bradford represents a measurable risk. His professional history indicates volatility. End quote. End quote. "Leo offers me space to breathe." End quote. Luna interrupted, her voice rising now. This was the moment of rupture, the psychological threshold crossed. And quote, "He sees me, Elias. He doesn't and oppose. TC a fragile object he has to constantly reposition to prevent damage. You see the future catastrophe. You don and oppose. TC the present woman," end quote. Elias realized the true extent of his failure. He hadn't and oppose. T just protected her. He had encased her. He looked around the pristine apartment, the closed blinds, the deactivated smart devices, all designed for maximum security, maximum isolation. It was a fortress he had built around their love, and the walls were now collapsing inward. End quote. "I did this for us," end quote. Elias pleaded, the objective facade cracking just enough to reveal the primal fear underneath. End quote. "I saw what happened. I know the cost of that day," end quote. Luna took a step back, her expression shifting from anger to profound grief. End quote. "The cost of that day was tragedy, yes. But the cost of your protection is my autonomy. I was fractured then, but I am smothered now. I would rather face the external world, even with its risks, than live confined by your fear." End quote. She reached up and grasped the fragile, silver bracelet she wore, a replica of the one that had broken in the original timeline. In a sharp, decisive motion, Luna pulled it from her wrist and tossed it onto the dark wooden floor. It hit the surface, scattering into 5 small, distinct pieces. The sound of the fragmentation was the acoustic climax of their relationship. Elias stood motionless, watching the shards. This identical, symbolic destruction, occurring months earlier and caused by his own psychological overreach, solidified the truth. He had not changed the outcome. He had merely streamlined the process of mutual destruction. End quote. "I am leaving, Elias," end quote. Luna stated, the resolution in her tone absolute. End quote. "I cannot fix your trauma by sacrificing my life to it. You needed to save yourself first. By trying to save me from everything, you became the only thing I needed to escape." End quote. She turned and walked towards the door. Elias made no attempt to physically stop her. His mind, processing data at an accelerated rate, was cataloging the final, terminal data point. Subject Luna Marin voluntarily terminated the relationship. Cause: overwhelming protective control by subject Elias Ward. He stood in the cold room, the silence swallowing the memory of her footsteps. The mission had failed. The timeline, in a cruel, self-correcting maneuver, had ensured that Luna and Elias were separated. Not by a catastrophic accident, but by the slow, deliberate erosion of trust and freedom. The separation was finalized on October 10, 2023, approximately 6 months before the original trajectory placed their ultimate breakup. Elias Ward, the man who traveled through time to save his love, achieved the exact inverse. He expedited its demise. His constant vigilance, his meticulous avoidance of risks, had created the perfect environment for Leo Bradford, the confident, stable figure, to step in and offer Luna the normalcy Elias had pathologically erased. Leo was not the disruptor. He was the functional replacement generated by Elias's instability. Elias sat back down at the table, placing his head in his hands. He had successfully prevented the physical scar, only to inflict a far deeper, unhealable psychological wound on both of them. He had returned to the past, tried to protect her, and tore them apart again definitively. Dr. Maya Lorenz, reviewing Elias and Apos' case files weeks later, would label this outcome the, in quote, protector paradox, in quote, a condition where the fear of loss becomes the active agent of that loss. Elias had not been able to rewrite history. He had merely been forced to witness the fragility of his own mental state reflected back in a truncated, painful loop. Se que esta historia é intensa, e por isso que eu compartilho esses momentos. Se você valoriza a verdade e gosta de histórias que te fazem pensar sentir, faça o seguinte. Considera esse inscrever no canal e comente de qual cidade você está assistindo. O melhor jeito de garantir que você não perca a próxima lição de vida. The final accounting of the Elias Ward case confirms a severe failure in predictive emotional modeling. Ward's temporal displacement, intended as a protective intervention, operated instead as an accelerator for the initial outcome. The variables remained immutable: Elias's fear and Luna's need for autonomy. The separation was finalized on the 14th of November, 3 months ahead of the original timeline breach. Luna Marin, having endured a sustained period of microcontrol disguised as concern, terminated the relationship unilaterally. Her assessment, recorded in correspondence with Leo Bradford, now her primary confidant, stated that she felt, and quote, safer walking alone than standing constantly braced for impact, end quote, next to Elias. Elias Ward's initial hypothesis, that a specific externally induced event was responsible for the initial rupture, was clinically disproven. The event he attempted to prevent was not a random accident or a tragedy, but the cumulative erosion of trust caused by his own instability. His constant intervention became the singular, most destabilizing factor in Luna's present life. Serena Ward provided the final confirmation required for the analytical close. She stated in her debriefing that the difference between the first and second timelines was merely one of speed. In the first instance, Elias's possessiveness manifested as retrospective grief. In the second, it manifested as preemptive suffocation. The result, however, was identical. Dr. Maya Lorenz and Apo's final diagnosis characterized Elias and Apo's actions as a severe manifestation of temporal anxiety disorder, complicated by savior complex delusion. Lorenz noted that Elias never truly accepted the concept of Luna's agency. He viewed her as a fragile artifact to be preserved, not a dynamic individual capable of navigating risk. The objective of his return trip was fundamentally flawed. He sought to eliminate risk entirely, a condition incompatible with human freedom and interaction. The psychological footprint left by the attempt was severe. Elias did not just lose Luna again. He lost the illusion of control that drove him back in time. He understood, with terrifying clarity, that the destruction he feared originated within his own protective shell. His attempt to build an impenetrable shield around Luna only served to imprison her, violating the core essence of their connection. Leo Bradford, the antagonist who emerged as the stable alternative, was the embodiment of the destiny Elias fought against. Bradford did not attempt to shield Luna from the world. He merely stood beside her, offering support rather than restriction. Bradford represented the acceptance of risk, the very component Elias had sought to excise from the equation. In the final data analysis, Leo Bradford was the constant of healthy partnership, proving that protection derived from control is fundamentally toxic. The visual evidence collected from the temporal debris confirmed the tragic loop. The broken fragments of glass, which reflected the futures Elias attempted to evade, eventually merged to reflect only one scene: Luna walking away, relieved, not devastated. The pulse of the timeline, initially distorted by Elias's insertion, snapped back into alignment the moment Luna chose freedom. The broken bracelet, the symbol of their repeating fracture, was found discarded, a final, silent statement on the failed experiment. This case study, designated officially as Operation Paradox, yields a critical moral conclusion for any who seek to rewrite personal history through control or intervention. The great lesson of Elias Ward and Apo's temporal failure is that profound loss cannot be averted by manipulating external circumstances if the internal flaws remain unaddressed. Elias focused relentlessly on preventing an outside event, dedicating zero effort to correcting the core issue: his inability to trust Luna to choose, fall, and rise again without his interference. To truly protect someone you love is to allow them the full spectrum of their humanity, including the capacity for pain. When love dictates a path of absolute safety, it ceases to be love and becomes proprietorship. Elias Ward's failure was not one of logistics or timing. It was a failure of trust. He sacrificed his relationship not to a cruel fate, but to his own overwhelming fear of vulnerability. He discovered that the greatest tragedy is not losing someone to chance, but driving them away through suffocating certainty. The temporal correction was completed. Elias Ward remains alone, carrying the weight of 2 failed relationships and the profound realization that he was the inevitable perpetrator in both timelines. The only factor he successfully changed was the timeline of his own despair. The data confirms, love that seeks to cage vulnerability will, without exception, lead to flight. If you want to save someone, you must first let them stand on their own. Now, I want to know from you. Comment here em baixo. Qual teria sido a sua escala no meu lugar? Você teria feito esse sacrifício? E se você gosta de fins surpreendentes, eu dixi outro video aqui ao lado. A uma história chocante. Clica lá. A gente se encontra no próximo video.